Okay. As people are populating the room, we will begin. Good evening. My name is Mark Mamagonian. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs at the National Association for Armenian Studies and Research. Good evening. Thanks for joining us, or afternoon, etc. And we are also grateful to be partnering again with our friends and colleagues at the Arat Askijian Museum, as we have done so many times over the years and will continue. And I would like to invite our good friend and colleague, the museum's director, Maggie Goshen, to introduce herself and say a few words, or maybe not introduce yourself, because I just introduced you, Maggie. So please.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Nasser, for hosting today's event. And this subject is very special to my heart and everyone that is watching because it truly encompasses the history of our nation, especially post-genocide, and what has been scattered all over and what we are able to put together. And I commend Dr. Sulayo for what she's doing, Suciyan, I'm sorry, for the work because I've done myself, not myself, but I've facilitated with several scholars. And I tell you the tedious work that goes together, not only to share the story, publish it, as well as researching it, piecing it together, the names, and trying to understand the languages. So I'm looking forward, Dr. Suchan, your presentation so that I can get some tips from you. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Maggie. So yes, this subject is very near and dear to all of us, I think, actually. And let me just, before I get into the subject matter of tonight, remind everyone watching that the work of organizations such as Nasser and the Arat Eskijian Museum is made possible by your support, your membership, your donations, and it's very easy to support these organizations. Just go online, find your way there. We'll help you. We'll make it as easy for you as possible, and it's work worth your supporting. Let me just mention that this year, 2025, is Nasser's 70th anniversary year, which we'll be celebrating in October in Boston on October 4th with a gala celebration. We hope you can be there with us. And 70 years ago this month, Nasser sponsored its first public lecture given by Professor Richard Fry of Harvard University, the one of the founders, as it were, of Iranian studies in the United States. Uh, and the talk was on the Armenians and the Mongols during the reign of King Hetum of Cilician Armenia. And this was given in Cambridge, Mass. At the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. I have no idea, actually, how many hundreds, if not possibly thousands, of lectures have taken place in the 70 years since then. But just as back then, Nasser was involved in an effort to raise the money to establish a chair in Armenian studies at Harvard, an effort which, by the way, was successful, and to which 3,000 individuals contributed. Today, also, Nasser, Art Eskijian Museum, and other Armenian cultural organizations need your support. And you don't have to be in Boston. You don't have to be in Southern California to be a supporter because here we are, wherever we are right now, on your computer, wherever you might be, and geography doesn't make any difference. So please look into supporting these organizations. Now, a couple of brief announcements. On Thursday, May 22nd, at the Arat Eskijian Museum, there will be a film screening of Tigran Paskevechyan's documentary film Coming Full Circle, which is about the Armenian repatriates after World War II, who returned to Soviet Armenia or who ventured to Soviet Armenia and their trials and tribulations. This is again at 7 p.m. on Thursday this week at the Arat Eskijian Museum. Please go again and support the Arat Eskijian Museum. And this will be a very interesting program, which I believe will be recorded and posted online after the fact. Next Tuesday, May 27th, there is a webinar hosted by our colleagues at the Promise Armenian Institute at UCLA and co-sponsored by Nasser and the Arat Eskijan Museum by Linda Barish Kurlangich. Urer Astvats, Where Were You, God? Armenian Identity Formation, Religious Belief, and Mental Health Amongst Ethnic Armenians in Turkey. Please watch online. And I'm very excited again about tonight's program because our speaker is a good friend and valued colleague and excellent scholar, and also because her talk tonight, Those Who Could Save Their World and Those Who Could Not, What Do Family Archives Tell Us, is part of a still small, I think, but growing subfield, if we can call it that, that sits at the intersection of family history and Ottoman Armenian history and Armenian American history and just plain old history, I guess you would say. History that indeed, as the description of her talk states so eloquently, represents, quote, knowledge that has been waiting to be discovered for over 100 years. Dr. Talin Suciyan is currently the Kazan Visiting Professor of Armenian Studies at Fresno State University. She is Associate Professor of Middle Eastern Studies and based in Munich, where she has been teaching and researching at the University of Munich for 16 years. She is the author of valuable books, including Armenians in Turkey After the Second World War, an archival reader of USSR consulate documents, which is forthcoming shortly from
Already,
IB Taurus.
already published.
Oh, it is in fact already out. Okay, very good. We need to order it. Outcasting Armenians, Tanzimat of the Provinces, Syracuse University Press 2023, and Armenians in Modern Turkey, Post-Genocide Society, Politics and History, IB Taurus 2016. Please, those of you in the audience, use the Zoom Q&A function to ask questions related to tonight's talk, which we will address after Dr. Suciyan's presentation. And with that, Talin, we welcome you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much for this opportunity to Nasser and to Eskijan, Arat Eskijan Museum of California, Los Angeles. And this is a unique opportunity for me to talk about my time at Fresno State too. And this spring term gave me the possibility to work on the family archives that I have been working on, but not that extensively and not that concentrated way. So Kazan Visiting Professorship at Armenian Studies program was a very good opportunity to dig into family archives and actually discover a completely new world of archival material. So thank you very much for organizing this webinar just before I leave for Munich, and I'll be talking today or tonight's event on 2 family archives from the United States and 1 from Canada. Specifically, I will examine century-old letters of 2 families who originated in the provinces of the Ottoman Empire and whose descendants are living in Philadelphia, as well as a collection of worldwide Armenian postcards kept in Montreal. However, before presenting these family archives, I would like to talk about the larger picture when it comes to Armenian archives. Archives become sources of history when we are cognizant of their existence, when we know how to use them and how to write history by tapping into these sources. For years, we had been led to believe that Armenians had no archives. It was assumed during the genocidal years that all archival history of the Armenians was destroyed. I was even told by an Armenian professor to change my doctoral topic on Armenians in Turkey, as I was not going to find any sources to conduct that study. However, in my first book, The Armenians in Modern Turkey, I was able to bring together Armenian and Turkish sources. The Armenian material came from Armenian National Assembly minutes, the voluminous amount of Armenian periodicals that exist in Turkey, as well as oral histories. Here, perhaps I can start sharing my presentation to show some visuals from my archival work. Let's see. Your screen sharing is paused, says Mark. Shall I try it again? Do you
Please.
see?
It
Okay.
says you've started screen sharing, but there's nothing showing yet.
Okay, I'll try it again. Stop share.
Okay.
Can you see my picture? Okay, screen.
Yes.
Good. So here are some visuals from the research periods. And first one is from the doctoral research period, Srpuhi Armenian Hospital in Istanbul. And this was the storage room where I worked, where there you can see at the in the background the Armenian periodicals.
Talin, sorry, it seems to be maybe stuck. It hasn't gone to full screen and it hasn't changed.
It hasn't been showing. Okay. It says it is your screen sharing is paused. Okay, I'll try it again. Stop. I don't know why this happens all of a sudden. Because we already tried it and it was working. Can you see it now? It says it is paused.
Why?
Why? Stop share. What could be the reason? I don't know, but I'll try it again. Sit. Present. In the worst case, you're not going to see this nice presentation and it's going to be... Okay, can you see it?
I see it.
Okay, let's hope that it's going to stay. Present. I think the reason why is that I think I have an idea. Wait a minute. I have to stop this.
You may have to just advance each one differently.
But then it's going to be very difficult because, let me see. It's never happened though before.
It's wonderful, really, how we keep having new experiences.
There's a Q&A message. Perhaps somebody is trying to help us.
Anne Karagosian says she needs to first open the file in a slideshow mode in a separate window, then share that window. This happened to me today. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Karagosian. Let's try it.
Let's try it. Can you see it now?
I do. Yes.
Do you see it now?
It's animating. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
We proceed. Thank you.
So these are from Srpuhi Armenian Hospital, where I worked, the storage room where I worked for years, basically for my PhD. And this is with Varujan Köseyan, who put all those periodicals in that storage room when they were about to be sent to recycling. So, yeah. And this is one of the oral histories that I conducted here in US with Yersapet Boyajian. And here it's about the second book. So you see young scholars. We visited Bogos Nubar Library and Outcasting Armenians. My second book is a result of the research that I conducted extensively in this library. So The book deals with the Ottoman Tanzimat, era, and the era of so-called reform from 1839 to the 1880s, which ironically resulted in escalating oppression for provincial Armenians. For this book, I relied heavily on material in the Nubar Library in Paris, where I came across the archives of the Armenian Patriarchate of Constantinople during the time of Tanzimat. Reading the appeals for justice to the Armenian Patriarch from Armenian peasants, Armenian destitute women, disabled Armenian workers, and those Armenian villagers who were subjected to provincial oppressions and then annihilated, radically changed my understanding of the history of the region. This brought to light that Armenians still fought for their rights and exhibited empowerment in the face of state oppression. You can see that there are a variety of documents, and this is one of those very interesting visuals, a map from the region of Mush. And this is an Ottoman written document from Beşiktaş, and these are all in the same Patriarchate archive of 19th century, Nubar Library, and this is from Sivas, Sepastia, 1854, a collective petition where you see lots of signatures and stamps underneath. And this is the book that is the end product of the work. And the amount of primary archival material and the content of these correspondences was not only overwhelming to me, but also life-changing. Reflecting on the locales, people, dialects, and expressions in these archives transported me to a world that no longer exists. Yet it is still a world that is familiar to us, as it is in the historical memory of all Armenians. It has been a privilege to be disciplined and generously taught by this archival material. I have found that studying family archives can be as rich and illuminating experience as studying the official sources. There is no hierarchy of archives. All archives are of equal value. The family archives are especially important in understanding the personal toll government oppression takes on individuals, in particular, the fear, anxiety, and day-to-day injustices and the repercussions of violence experienced by the oppressor. The study of the first family archive I will discuss began during the COVID years when Paul Vartansukiasyan, a journalist from Philadelphia, now living in Armenia, first showed me his family letters. They were written in Armeno-Turkish by Srpuhi Tekian, his great-grandmother, who corresponded with her daughters in Philadelphia while she remained in Constantinople. The date of her letters was the key. She wrote them after the Kemalist takeover in the fall of 1922. Her portrayal of the everydayness of mourning, of being left behind, of being a surviving Armenian woman living in a house where the roof was leaking and there was no time to repair it because soon there will be no way to live in that house. Almost as a metaphor, the leaky roof represented the impossibility of living in this place. This is Srpuhi Tekian and her daughters. Srpuhi Tekian's language, the Turkish idioms she used, the way she explained her daily life, her desire to be present in the lives of her daughters thousands of miles away on another continent were all embodiment of her story. After Paul and I had started reading the letters and translating them into English, Paul sent me postcards, dozens of postcards, sent from different places. Letters, postcards, photographs, and other personal items from the first generation that immigrated to the United States were all placed in a trunk. You're seeing the trunk in this visual. This trunk was moved from one relative's house to another until Paul found it, opened it, and shared its contents with me in our online reading sessions. As we learned about Srpukhi's life through her letters and other artifacts, we wrote 2 articles in English for 2 edited volumes on Armenian survivors' biographies. We also published 1 article in April 2025, very recently, in a Turkish monthly history magazine. Srpuhi Tekian's world, which we were able to access through her letters and photographs, was very empowering. Despite living as an Armenian woman survivor in a post-genocidal context, Srpuhi demonstrated the resourcefulness to save herself and her children, which in turn contains a deep, empowering knowledge for us, today inviting us to look into the strategy which saved her and her legacy. She managed to send all 3 of her daughters to the United States in the summer of 1922. Here in this picture, they're on the deck of the ocean liner, so just before the daughters left Istanbul. They left just before the Turkish army defeated the Greeks, which meant thereafter the lives of Armenians and other Christians in Turkey would be even more endangered. Impending insecurities led people en masse to leave the country without actually knowing where they would land. Srpukhi was living in Istanbul with her 2 sons, as all the Armenians were trying to get on ships to France or Greece. All Srpukhi's days were similar to each other. In a letter to her daughters, she expressed her loneliness and her lamentable state of being left behind in a very simple yet powerful way. I wake up, and I quote, "I wake up in the early morning, we drink coffee, and Artin, her son, leaves. I sit in front of the window and think, and then urge myself not to think because it's useless. We are staying with Madame Lucine, and I go to liturgy and Sunday Mass, and then I go to the market and cook. And sometimes I want to go to Filu or Sima's house, and sometimes they come to me. Sometimes I go to the Armenian cemetery, and sometimes the younger bride and the older bride come, and sometimes your uncle's wife comes to visit. Some days nobody comes and nobody goes, and I sit until 10 o'clock when Artin comes home and we eat." End of quote. She wrote to her daughters that their brothers were in danger of being conscripted, and that was why she couldn't leave the country. However, as in the case of her daughters, she sensed the danger, she understood the impending catastrophe, she acted quickly, and when the time came to leave, at the end of 1922, she took the opportunity with her 2 sons. Thus, in January 1923, Srpuhi Tekian was the hero of her family. She saved her world from oblivion and hence became the matriarch of her family. This is her handwriting, and I'm in a Turkish. And Srpuhi was one of those nameless women whose lives we would have never known, whose survival we would have never learned of, and whose inner strength we would have never come to understand had we not read her letters. Her 6 letters, totaling 20 pages, opened the proverbial doors of hell before us and made us understand Srpukhi's strategy to survive and save her family before it was too late. As 20th century philosopher Walter Benjamin evokes in his writings, she used the time of danger to understand the deepest truth. Life had to go on, and it could only thrive and prosper outside of the geography of catastrophe. She made her decision and succeeded. She actually made what Benjamin calls a tiger's leap. The second family archive that I'm going to talk about today is that of Shamlians of Philadelphia. This is a work in progress. This study has been made possible by a small group of people meeting weekly for over a year, reading 112-year-old letters and slowly transcribing and translating them. Most of the 70 pages of the letters written have been digitized. We are determined to continue the work. Nearly all the letters are written by Kevork Shamlian in Arapkir to his brother Mardiros Shamlian, who emigrated from Arapkir to Philadelphia in 1902. Like many young Armenian men, Mardiros was a bantucht, a migrant worker, forced to leave the provinces so he could earn money to send home to pay the exorbitant taxes on Armenians. 11 years later, Kevork sent his son Arakel to join Mardiros in Philadelphia to save him from the untenable conditions for young Armenian men in the provinces, namely being drafted into the Turkish army. Here is Arakel, the younger gentleman is the Arakel with his varbet when he was learning how to become a tailor. In the early summer of 1913, in the midst of the Balkan Wars, young Arakel Shamlian rode off on horseback, saying goodbye to his family and birthplace, Arapkir. He did not know that he would never see his family or his birthplace again. He had with him two precious gifts, a divan or a daybed cover woven by his father Kevork, and pair of socks knit by his sister Zabel and Zarui. This is a blanket. We have another picture and I'll show it later on so that you can see how big it is and how heavy it is. You can imagine how heavy it is. And these are the socks. Arakel was to carry these pieces all along the way to Constantinople, from Arapkir to Constantinople, from Constantinople to Patras in Greece, and from Greece to Philadelphia. So here is a map. Of course, you have only here Istanbul, but Arapkir is way more eastern than Istanbul, and then you can imagine how long this whole journey was from Arapkir to Istanbul, from Istanbul to Patras here, and from here to Philadelphia. It took him longer than planned because he couldn't board the ship from Patras immediately. He was detained supposedly due to an eye infection, but in reality, the ship was full and Arakel had to wait for another ship before he could continue his journey. With minimal communication, not receiving word that their son was safe with his uncle, the family back in Arapkir was distraught. According to Ellis Island's records, Arakel finally arrived in the USA by the Martha Washington ocean liner on July 23, 1913. The same register testifies that Arakel was born in 1893 in Arapkir, making him only 19 when he made this journey. These are visuals from Armenian Immigration Project, and this is the register. Until Kevork Shamlian, Arakel's father, received the good news that Arakel had arrived safely in Philadelphia, he had been haunted by nightmares. In a letter from August 1913, he vividly expresses his anxiety and fears. His Armenian is eloquent, has influences of classical Armenian krapar, and is peppered with references to God and the Bible. And I quote, first in Armenian original and then in English. Գիշեր եւ ցերեկ երազից մեջ կտեսնեմ, որ մերդան մեկ կողմը այրած էր։ Գսեմ ես հիմա քոսեի, փան չի գար, երբ այս կեսը վարեցավ։ Անշուշտ ասիգա թշնամիի կորձ է, արթնցա եւ ահա ոչինչ կա։ Վերջաբես այս եւ ասոր նման երազներ զիս կդխրեցնեին։ Գսեմ գամ եղբոր կամ Արաքելի փամը բադահած է։ Սակայն օրհնյալ է Աստված։ Մութը լույս նող Աստված կա, ծեր նամակները մեզ հանգստացուց։ End of quote. In the English translation, night and day in my dreams, one part of the house was burned. This is enemy's work, of course. Then I will wake up and there's nothing. Finally, these nightmares ended. I was thinking something must have happened either to my brother or to my son Arakel. Yet, blessed is the God who turns darkness into light. Your letters have comforted us, by all means. End of quote. Just as Srpuhi Tekian in 1922 was concerned about her sons, Kevork Shamlian in 1913 Arapgir was anxious for the same reason, this time because of the Balkan Wars. In a September 1913 letter, Kevork informs his brother Mardiros in Philadelphia about the peace treaty to end the Balkan Wars. Kevork Shamlian writes about how dire the economic situation was, especially because of the war. He refers to it by saying, and I quote, "Had we not had military, things could have been better," end of quote. Meaning, most probably, they had to feed the Turkish army, as was expected from Armenians during times of war. On the other hand, the abusive and oppressive taxation was extracting everything Armenians had. Therefore, poverty in the provinces on the verge of the First World War was forcing more and more Armenians from the provinces to make that long and risky journey from the Ottoman Empire to the unknown continent of America. As with the letters of Srpuhi Tekian from Istanbul to Philadelphia, in this case too, letters were not only a source of happiness, but also a way to connect to those who were left behind. Kevork Shamlian in 1913 Arapgir describes himself as being in a well of hell. However, unbeknownst to him, hell had yet to break out. Among the Shamlian family archive, there is only one letter written in Ottoman script. This one was written by another Mardiros, Mardiros Tekian. He was a cousin of Kevork's wife and was writing to his own son Artin and to Arakel. Ironically, it was the first letter I read from the collection. Here's a translation, and I quote, "To my son Artin and Arakel Ağa, with my special greetings, I hope you are doing fine. If you ask us, as the date of this letter, we are all safe and sound, and we greet you specially. We were very happy to receive a number of letters from you, which we read longingly. Your mother, brother, and your daughter are healthy. They are sending their greetings. Your brother-in-law, Hacı Kevork Ağa, is healthy, and they send their greetings. So are Şirinoğlu Ağa. We are asked to write our letters in Turkish by the government, and therefore we are writing in Turkish. If you ask how we are doing, we are all doing fine. We earn a good living. The only problem we have is missing you. May God make us worthy to see each other with our worldly eyes. Please greet us, my cousins, Nazaret Ayciyan, Mardiros, and Ohannes Ağas. Here, your uncle Ohannes Ağa and all his family members are fine. They are sending their greetings. All your neighbors here, both young and old, they're fine and sending their greetings. We hope that all of you there are doing well. 9th Teşri Nisani 1333. This is the Rumi date. In Gregorian date calendar system, it will be 9th of November, 1917. So this the importance here is that the date, it was dated with the very shortly used system of Rumi calendar. And once it is converted, it makes November 1917, and it creates all of a sudden a new situation for us, because we were thinking when reading the letters that the Tekian and Shamlian families lost their lives in 1915. However, this letter shows that these families rescued the exiles for at least 2 more years and the killings. Okay, I don't know if you can still see, right? Okay, so this is one of the letters that returned to Philadelphia.
Yes, still good.
Okay. So coming back to this letter, in their first sentences, they made it clear, if you ask us, as of the date of this letter, we are all safe and sound, and we greet you specially. In original, bizlerden sual ederseniz tarihi mektuba değin, vücudu acizanemiz sıhhatte olup mahsusan selam ederiz. End of quote. We can assume that all the names mentioned in the letter were survivors, and those who were not mentioned as being healthy and greeting them in Philadelphia might not be alive. However, it is still unclear how they managed to live 2 more years after the summer of 1915. What we know about the killings and deportations from Arapgir is that by mid-June and early July 1915, the Armenians of Arapgir were already being arrested, thrown into Euphrates, and sent on their death marches. Yet we do know that there were some Armenians who remained in the town to provide the Muslim population with the necessities of life on temporary permits. Further, the textile company needed weavers, and thus the fact that Shamlians were weavers might have allowed them to survive by working for that company for an additional 2 years. We do not know exactly when, where, and how members of Shamlian and Gıçıkian families lost their lives. Do you see it as a proper presentation, or do you see some extra frames on the screen?
I see the frames on the left side.
And you're seeing also probably here some frames, right?
Yes.
Okay, you shouldn't be seeing those. So, okay, let me see if I can. Can you see it now? Is it
That
better?
looks good.
Okay. Being invited to give lectures around the world has afforded me wonderful opportunities to meet many Armenians and learn about their families. Often these visits are full of unexpected events. They are not always the most cheerful and lighthearted. In particular, the most striking information comes from the strangest moment. A meeting 2 years ago in Montreal with Nadia Fenerci and her daughter Aslin led me to discover the third family archive I would like to present you today. It was one of those strange moments when Miss Fenerci told me that they had something at home which might be of interest to me. Words fall short of expressing my excitement when I first saw her late husband Berç Fenerci's visual and philological masterpiece. It was collected and kept with care and compassion over decades, and the collection creates Berç Fenerci's own personal narrative of Armenian history. Berç Fenerci, an Armenian from Istanbul, lived the majority of his life there, attended local Armenian and French schools, and in his youth collected stamps. One day, he found a postcard sent by his grandfather and so started to collect postcards related to Armenians. His interest in the stories behind the postcards increased over the years, and he oftentimes toured Europe to buy postcards from auctions.
I think we may be stuck again. I'm sorry, Talin.
I didn't move it. Is
Oh,
yeah.
Never mind.
Okay. In Istanbul too, he made a habit of visiting certain antique shops looking for postcards for his collection. He compiled an impressive visual and textual collection over decades, which has a story to tell, namely the history of Armenians with a beginning and an end. Totaling approximately 1,000 postcards from the Caucasus, Iran, Upper Mesopotamia, Palestine, Cilicia, Asia Minor, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, and Italy, as well as the Armenian towns and villages of the old country, they were compiled and organized from east to west. He used an extensive list of secondary literature when bringing together the visual timeline of the history of Armenians. Thus, his visual narrative was structured through his readings of Armenian history and Armenian existence on their historic lands. The first panel of his collection starts with the Armenian kings and prominent figures of Armenian history and continues with monumental buildings of Armenian architecture, monasteries, and churches. As the collection's visual narrative unfolds, we see numerous postcards, maps of villages, depictions of gardens, working farmers, peasants, painters, and prominent Armenian leaders. Also included are written forms such as international correspondences, documents, registers of orphans, and many others. And here I'm going to show, for instance, in order to make his logic of collecting postcards also clear, he bought one of the postcards, as you see on the right side, with Hırımyan Hayrik, and then he also put together with one of his letters that he found. So, and here again, another postcard with Hırımyan Hayrik. So, and this is all categorized under one. And here you can see that he was using a map with an arrow, and then a picture of the region that he was pointing at, the arrow was pointing at, and then the postcard. And here you see Beylan on the left and Pingyan on the right. In Montreal, I immersed myself in the world of Berç Fenerci. His collection was his philological, visual, and cartographic world of survival. This was his way of rescuing his world. By buying postcards across Europe and beyond, by collecting evidence of Armenians in their historic lands, and by meticulously putting them in order, he created a narrative of survival. Berç Fenerci put his time, energy, and money into seeking, acquiring, and compiling this collection of 1,000 postcards. That is the archive that Fenerci family carefully continues to keep. So here, this is a picture that I took during my research on Armenian orphans on the island of Syros. It was called previously Syra. And Armenian orphans were kept on the island of Syros. And there was a Armenian orphanage there. Now it's a military compound, but in the entrance of the military compound, there is a museum where pictures and also the toys of the kids are exhibited. And this is a picture from that museum. And we are back here in the postcard collection of Berç Fenerci, who understood the importance of of the Armenian orphans who were everywhere, and he collected those postcards that orphans sent to each other. As you may know, the orphanages were not keeping the siblings together, but they were separating the siblings. So the children were sending each other postcards. And here are some of those postcards from Berç Fenerci's collection. There is a lecture on Berç Fenerci's collection only, and also on Srpuhi and Arapgir, Shamlians of Arapgir, that I held at Fresno State. You can find the links on Armenian Studies program YouTube channel of Fresno State. Studying family archives, our own or those of other Armenians, can lead us to precious knowledge and revelations about a world that patiently awaits our discovery. Most of us have no idea of the specific fate of our lost ancestors. Harry Harutyunyan, in his extraordinary memoir, The Armenian Genocide, Unspoken as Heritage, speaks of the helplessness of not even knowing his grandmother's name. Knowing one's grandparents' names should be considered a birthright, and yet the simplest knowledge has been taken away from many of us. Genocides not only annihilate populations, but more than that, they annihilate the very basic knowledge about ourselves, so that we continue searching generation after generation. This knowledge literally includes anything and everything, such as deep understanding of plants, herbs, seeds, crops, medicine, textile, underground resources, how to create forests, how to use water, and many more. As indigenous people of the Ottoman provinces, Armenians deserve this knowledge as their birthright. What else can family archives teach us? Srpuhi's letters from the catastrophic fall of 1922 speak to us over 100 years later. They teach us about the everydayness of mourning, how to read the truth of dangerous times, how to call upon one's courage to survive and consequently become the hero of one's own story. The Shamlian's archives, family archive, which waited patiently for 112 years to be read and understood, teaches us to put ourselves in the shoes of those who endured the catastrophe. What were the conditions in which they were living? What were the day-to-day oppressions they were subjected to? What did it mean to live in purgatory? Those who were sent to become migrant workers, taking long and dangerous journeys to an unknown continent, became the future of the Shamlian family. And here you can see how big the blanket is. Similarly, reviewing Berç Fenerci's unique and extensive collection of postcards, maps, pictures, and documents takes us by the hand and walks us through the vicissitudes of Armenian history. His lifetime of devotion to his endeavor creates the world of Armenians and pays tribute to their achievements, tenacity, and resilience. Working with family archives requires patience. We are not looking for grand incidents or events, nor are we primarily concerned with finding evidence of anything. This approach frees us from hierarchies, as each letter becomes equally important. In these documents, our minds learn to see the everydayness of violence, revealing layers of damage to human and non-human life. Furthermore, this labor-intensive work of trying to understand a world which no longer exists unravels truths that have been waiting to be understood for so long. While scholars have been putting the emphasis on studying important, wealthy, famous, prominent, and intellectual Armenians, it is time to remember the nameless. The work here proves it is equally necessary to study the heroism of ordinary people portrayed in family archives. Writing histories of ordinary Armenians gives names and personality, those who should be remembered as individuals, and not only by the numbers they constitute as victims. Their letters bear witness to a time and a world that was brought to an end. Therefore, they include the most precious knowledge of the most dangerous times. Approaching these materials from a bottom-up historiographic perspective reveals the footsteps of upcoming catastrophe, making us more aware, more sensitive, more open, and more egalitarian. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope everything worked at the end with the presentation. So I can stop sharing. Okay.
All worked out. Thank you. Thanks for the technological tips from the audience as well. I guess it's a good example of crowdsourcing. While we are gathering questions from the audience, again, please use the Zoom Q&A. I just wanted to ask you, Talin, to reflect a little bit based on your experience with these various archives on some of the skill set required to deal with these. Many of us watching, or as individuals or even as institutions, have archives like this in our attics, basements, in our archives as organizations, which are also in some ways awaiting discovery. But it's not just as simple as opening the box and letting the information fly out, is it?
No, it's not. And when we first started with Paul, I didn't know what I was reading. You know, you first have to read one letter one by one, and then you start to understand this person's world. It takes time. I mean, it's not only reading and understanding. Of course, you have to know Armenian. You have to be able to read the Armenian letters, or you have to know Turkish if it's in Armenian or Turkish. And of course, you have to be able to understand, read the Ottoman script, etc. But there is more than the script, than the language itself. You have to know, you have to understand the whole context of it. And it's not always easy, automatic, and it's not always easily accessible. So when I saw the date in Srpuhi Tekian's letter, 1922 September, there was a reference for me because I knew what it meant. It was after the defeat of Greek army, so Armenians were on the verge of leaving the country yet another time. So there was danger for them, yeah, there was danger. It was dangerous to stay in that country. So the whole thing made sense to me when I put it in the context. The same or even more difficult was 1913. So I had to think about, okay, what was in 1913? Why was he going to US? Why was he becoming a Bantucht? And then the whole Balkan Wars and the conscriptions and Armenians who were conscripted who never came back. You know, these whole situation of danger became clear to me. So in each case, we have to understand the whole context. And then the new finding of November, the date 1917. I mean, that is a huge question. How did that happen? So apparently, we have to be working with a number of other primary and secondary sources in order to put all these letters in a certain context. And then when reading lots of letters, you see the similarities in the letters. Although people do not know each other and they are sending their letters from different places to different places, they write in a very similar way. So I think we need more people to work on these materials so that we can show that there's a corpus there to study in the first place. This time, I mean, it happened with Paul that we had our sessions during COVID. We were reading the letters, and then with Shamlian family, Susan Pogarian, Susan Jolly, and John Paulson, we were reading together, and we continue this work. It's been over 1 year now, so it's a very labor-intensive work. And so you have to have patience in the first place. And then most of the things are not written openly. So you have to guess what they are saying from the whole context. You have to know what can be written in a letter sent from the Ottoman Empire to the US. And you have to make, you have to think with suggestions. He might have said this and this and this, and then putting in a context, you would perhaps understand what they're saying. And this was the case in this letter where there were lots of greetings. And when I first read it, it was like, why are they greeting? Why everybody is greeting? And then I understood that was, a way of saying we are here and we are alive. So I think we need, a set of skills that covers all these things. And it's not always easy, and it's very time consuming, definitely.
Mm. So there, apart from several people thanking you for your presentation, there are two related questions about what should be done with these archives, in the sense of where do they most properly belong, and how can they be best preserved and therefore made available to researchers?
Well, I guess, first of all, we have to raise awareness that these are important.
Yes.
I mean, in many cases, families kept these things in one way or another without knowing what their content was, but they knew that they were to be kept, not to be thrown away. I think this is very important. And then, even if they were not understanding, they were really thinking that there was something there to be discovered. So now, one thing is where to send them. Probably Ms. Goshen would say that, Armenian Suciyan Museum would be the right place, but then we need still scholars to work on them.
Yes.
So, and I think in US, where we have human resources and funding and also place to send them, I think we have to raise awareness that, there should be also financial resources to work on them. and there should be teams, working on these materials. There are a lot, apparently. I mean, I have been working only with 3-4 of them, and the more I'm writing and talking about it, people are writing to me, asking me what to do with their family archives. So it's very interesting and very, very, I would love to do, but I'm, we can't go without having a institutional help and support for this project.
Yes, indeed. Yes, you may have just invented a job for yourself,
Yes.
but now you just need to invent someone to pay you
Yeah.
to do the work. That's all. Just that small step. Yes, I would certainly say as well that responsible institutions like Suciyan or Nasser or the Armenian Museum or the Armenian Research Center in Dearborn, etc., where these materials will be properly cared for is and preserved is step one. But yes, of course, step two is having people who are capable to do the work and have funding to allow them to do the work. Of course, people the families who have preserved these materials deserve our gratitude. At some point, for the most part, though, it seems it's going to reach a terminal point where no one in the family can properly deal with it, and that truly is where the institutions. We need to remind people that the institution exists. So sorry about that little bit of preaching there. So, question from Gregory Jandanian here in Massachusetts. My mother's side of the family came from Arapgir. What resources exist in English to learn more about life in Arapgir? Are there resources in English on Arapgir?
In English, I couldn't remember. I know Armenian and Turkish, but I just,
There's not much to sort of answer the question. There was a very partial translation of the Arapgir book by Polatyan that was undertaken some years ago by George Georgian that can be found, but you don't have to be too observant to notice one is rather small and the other one is enormous.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, can you talk about the difficulties of dealing with Armenian handwriting? Is this something that poses a particular challenge for you?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, it depends from where it is coming, and it depends from of the background of the person who is writing. At a certain point, we were all very, very much accustomed to the handwriting of Kevork Shamlian, and who had a education of a priest, so he was writing actually in a very eloquent language, in a very there is a presumption that Armenians of the provinces were not that literate, were not that educated. And I think in 1910-13, the letters of Kevork Shamlian proves the opposite. And of course, not everybody probably was not educated as much as Kevork Shamlian, but there are so many other letters which are in Armenian, in Armeno-Turkish, that it shows that people were quite literate and were writing or expressing themselves in a very professional way when they were writing to their beloved ones and brothers and relatives away. So yes, of course, you have to get used to the handwriting, and on the other hand, I think it's doable.
Can you talk about the differences in approach or maybe your feelings about dealing with archives, call these unofficial archives, versus your work dealing with official archives? Do you approach them differently? Do they tend to complement each other or contradict each other, or are they essentially two parts of the same, well,
They are the two parts of the same reality, of course. And in the family archives, we find things that we hardly ever find in official archives, because official archives are always about a very specific issue. They are written because of a problem, because of a continuing problem, unresolved issue, whatever it is. But then in the letters, we are finding the whole background to it. And there's most of the time it's one sentence, and that one sentence you shouldn't be, you should be very careful to understand that what that one sentence tells us. Like in the case of, had there what was that sentence, the quote, when there was no military, actually we were doing well. So what does that mean? That one sentence tells a lot of things. So we have to understand from there that because of the war, there was an extra, the state of emergency, and the economic situation was getting worse for the Armenians, etc. So actually what you're seeing in the letters are what the repercussions of those larger or ongoing, continuing oppressive policies, those kind of things you're finding in the archives. You're seeing the repercussions of day-to-day violence in the provinces. And I think that is something very enriching, in a sense that our understanding of genocide, our understanding of organized violence changes, because most of the time we tend to think that killing or mass killings, massacres are the most important parts of genocide. Of course they are, but then you have a process that led to it. So what I mean, in the periods of genocides, what we witness is the scale of the violence that differs. But what has been done during what was done during the genocide was something that had been experienced by the Armenians of the provinces over 100 years, perhaps. So the letters are showing these continuities, these daily the daily practices of violence, and that changes our understanding of genocide.
Question is about, do you have an affiliation with, or if as the case may be that you do not have an affiliation, do you have any thoughts on the work of the hushamadian.org?
I mean, I don't have an affiliation, but I do know their website, and from time to time, I do refer to that website. Also, for those who are interested in English, like Arapgir in English, probably Hushamadian website will be a point of reference.
Yes. What did you find in the correspondence that you looked at that tells us about the adaptations made by those who survived to thrive in America? This is if you understand the question. I think I understand the question.
Well, the America part has yet to be studied. Of course, there are mentions of it, but it's more like relatives in America, how they are supporting each other and where they are living, etc. So I think we have to work more in order to respond to that question.
It's an area that requires a lot more work generally.
Yes.
Since we have a tendency to tell the story of, and then they came to America and they lived happily ever after.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's not the case. From what I read, I can tell that that's not the case. But for more, I have to work on the material more.
A little more complicated than that. So looking ahead, and looking at this from a scholarly perspective, how can this work be encouraged to be done more in such a way that it complements the kind of, whatever you want to call it, more traditional formal archival research that is more usually viewed as being the work of quote unquote serious scholars?
Well, I think we are still serious scholars when working with the family archive.
Yes, of course. That's my my finger quotes. Yes.
And I think we have to change our mindset that only wealthy, only prominent, only famous Armenian families' archives are worthy of publication. And once we change that mindset, I think, for instance, for the case of Shamlian family, there are 70 pages of letters. These letters can be published as originals, as visuals of originals, and then there could be articles on these letters, and this can be a book very easily. It can be published as a book, and would constitute a very particular history of Arapgir, where we have a couple of books, but then I mean, these are insider views of Arapgir, and they are about a period that was going towards a genocide. So it's the period is very, very important. It's a very dangerous one. It means it is the most important truth is hidden in this period. So I think once we change our mindset, then we can also start supporting these kind of projects more.
Agreed. Thank you. Maggie, could I ask you a question? Would you like to mention before we close your upcoming exhibition, but unmute yourself?
I was so much immersed in our conversation. I was still in Arapgir. I didn't come out of Arapgir. On June 1st, we're having a special presentation by Berç Fenerci on Armenian embroidery. And we're also going to be exhibiting the collection that we have in the museum, starting about 30 years ago by Mr. Suciyan, the founder, that he has collected, and what we have collected since then. So we're talking about almost 1,000 pieces. And then included in that would be a section on Musadar that Professor Shamlian has collected. The photos from the Aleppo camp that would be also exhibited to show the resilience of the Armenian women. Even in the most dire times, they were able to make a living and then be able to survive. And here we are, the next generation. So that's going to open from June 1st until June 15th. And afterwards, it's going to be in the Dikmajian Community Center. And then afterwards, whatever we are going to put it in the museum for a while to share. These are items that have never seen the day of light. We have items from the Armenian embroidery from the Sultan's palace. The Armenian women have embroidered that have been sitting. Unfortunately, a family member of mine from Lebanon, who was a collector for many, many years. He used to go to the different parts of the world and collect it. He cut them into pieces to give to 4 of his children. That's the old mentality. So I only have one piece left that I'll be sharing it. I was talking with their daughter who's at the nursing home today, that what she passed on to us. For me, every piece that comes in makes me closer. I feel that there's someone that lived this piece, someone embroidered it, and then now we are sharing it. So I'm very excited. It's a lot of work, but it's worthwhile.
Excellent. So
So
please,
thank you, Mark, for allowing me to share it.
yeah, if you're in Southern California, please go see it. It will
Yes.
be worth
Thank
your
you.
while. And Talin, before we close, could you tell us briefly, give us a teaser for your next talk, whenever that might be, but tell us about the new publication, Armenians in Turkey After the Second World War, an archival reader of USSR consular documents, a different kind of work than what you've talked about today.
Yeah, that is a archival reader, came to being coincidentally. Actually, I was looking for the answer of the very simple question, why the Soviet immigration campaign from Turkey did not take place. And during that research in Armenian state archives, I came across with a file that was about Armenians who registered themselves at the Soviet consulate of Istanbul, explaining why they wanted to emigrate, one day they wanted to immigrate to the Soviet Armenia. And all the documents were in Russian. Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation helped me to translate those documents into English. And then it was another state archive, all of a sudden, this time the Soviet archives, that were, Armenians, where the testimonies of Armenians were registered. And of course, those consular officers had no idea what they were facing when Armenians in thousands were coming and telling their stories of survival in the provinces and the reasons why they wanted to leave the country. And I didn't find the answer to my question, why it did not take place, but I did find something, I guess, more precious than what I was looking for. The testimonies of Armenians of the provinces, where Armenian women, in the most case, were sent from the provinces to Istanbul to register the whole family, the whole village. So this is, I think, important for all those who are claiming, no, this is important for all of us, but then for all those who are claiming that there are no archives, everywhere there are archives. It's just, we have to know, look around us more carefully. Yeah, there are no lectures on that book yet, but there will be another lecture next week in Glendale on outcasting Armenians and on 19th century correspondences of Armenians from the provinces to Istanbul. And for all those who are interested in the topic, can come to the lecture next week, Tuesday.
Excellent.
And for today's lecture, I want to thank Susan Pogarian and Susan Jolie, because they have been supporting me, putting time, effort, and energy to give feedbacks to my presentation. And it was with their support that I could do today's, and of course, John Paulson, with their support, I could do the presentation today. I would like to thank them wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Talin, and thank you, Maggie, our Suciyan, for joining with us on this presentation. And those of you watching, whether in person or at some future date on YouTube, look in your boxes and attics and drawers and closets, and when you find materials, please preserve them and contact a responsible organization to find a home for them, and so they can find scholars like Talin who can work with them and tell the stories that they contain. On that note, we'll conclude and see you next